Chapter 1. What the writing on the tablet says. The sun deity of Mesopotamia, named Shamash, became the Babylonian god of the law, justice, and salvation. Shamash united the lunar and solar cults, absorbing all groups weaker than his belief. The tablet of Shamash is a celebration of Shamash, the law, and the establishing of order. In as early as 2600 BCE, judgments were declared according to the just law of Shamash. The tablet of Shamash is considered by some to be the most divinely inspired work of art ever crafted by human hands. It has been studied for generations. In this book, a bold new interpretation of its message, purpose, and warning will be shared. The creator of this work sincerely hopes that you are both entertained and informed by the information presented. It is imperative that you receive this effort with the same inquisitive spirit that created it. The tablet of Shamash we have today was found in approximately 1881 CE. It was lost during the reign of Adad-apla-iddina, when the Sutu, or Sutians, sacked and looted the cities of Uruk and Nippur. During the reign of Simbar-Sipak, a shrine to Shamash was created, and a priest was given the task of providing offerings in the hope that Shamash's favor would once again return to the land. The surviving tablet of Shamash is a commemorative engraving celebrating the rediscovery of the original tablet during the reign of King Nabu-apla-iddina. For our purposes, we will say the original tablet was found in approximately 870 BCE. At that point, it had been missing for approximately 170 years. The truth is that no one knows how old the original tablet of Shamash was, who created it, or what era it came from. All experts do know is that it was a prized possession sought for centuries by the most learned nobles of the land. What is known of the tablet of Shamash is the exact interpretation of the words written on it. The following is a concise summary of the writing on the tablet. Our story begins in 870 BCE with the rediscovery of the tablet of Shamash.
Shamash, the great lord, who dwells in Ebabara, which is Sippar. Sin, Shamash, and Ishtar are set over against the heavenly ocean within the divine judge. Headdress of Shamash, rod of dew. After the region was overthrown by the Sutu, the law of Shamash was forgotten because the tablet containing his figure and insignia were destroyed. With it no longer available to be seen, its knowledge left the people's minds. Even though Shamash refused to reveal himself to the king continued to pay tribute to Shamash by making regular offerings. The king erected a shrine for Shamash in the hope that one day Shamash's image and insignia could be placed there, but they were not found. During a time of distress and famine, a seer, mystic, or shaman settled in the area. By this point, a new king had taken the throne, and the offerings to Shamash had all been discontinued. The seer approached the new king and requested that tributes once again be made to Shamash. He claimed the lack of those offerings had caused the famine and cost the land Shamash's favor. The king granted the seer a meager allowance equal to the least amount of any director or priest of one of the other gods. It was given to rebuild a relationship or establish contact with Shamash. The seer was given a place to contemplate or meditate upon Shamash. It appears that this arrangement was to be carried out in secret because the offerings were not to take place at Shamash's shrine. They were to be carried out in a garden district, most likely destroyed by the famine. During this time, a new ruler arose. He and the followers of the man-god Marduk overthrew the Sutu. A natural leader, he restored order in the area which had spiraled into chaos. The land was once again worth living in. The new leader created many shrines to all the gods, including Shamash. He also had their works of art recreated. After all the troubles, the old rules and regulations were once again accepted by the people. Free will offerings of gratitude increased. Though Marduk became the god of the people, Shamash remained the god of the gods. It became known that even though Shamash had been angry with the people for abandoning him, the garden offerings that had been established by the previous king for Shamash pleased him. The secret offerings became viewed as the source of the blessing that had looked over Marduk during the overthrow. During this time of peace and expansion, the lost image of Shamash and the law was found in a secret place, where it had been hidden long ago by the king before the cities of Uruk and Nippur had been sacked and looted. The offspring of the original seer, the new caretaker of Shamash's garden, was called to the king, presumably to explain what the image means. To celebrate the return of the tablet of Shamash, after 170 years of being lost, an exact copy of the image of the law was crafted and given to the seer. Although it is not stated, it was presumably to be taken back to the garden to be meditated upon and deciphered. So excited was the king to have Shamash's image and guide back that he commissioned another copy of it be prepared out of gold and placed in Shamash's temple. A purification ritual or water baptism, the washing of the mouth, or possibly the swearing of secrecy was established, and a permanent clergy for Shamash's temple was put in place. Great offerings were made to Shamash. Word of Shamash's return to the temple spread, and many settlers wishing to be close to him moved to the area. The king proclaimed that this blessing and bounty were brought upon the people through the diligence of the seer and his children, who, with so little to offer Shamash and even less to survive off, had maintained the garden and restored Shamash's faith in the people. The seer, for having rebuilt the relationship with Shamash with so little, was granted the king's share of profits from the temple. The garden, now thriving, was appointed guards and a percentage of all offerings from the temple. Additional officials, presumably from the temple, were to be assigned to the garden as well. Each of them were to receive twice the allowance of their counterparts in the temple. It is believed by some that this is the beginning of the establishing of an intellectual class with influence over an administrative class. This was done because, even though the king had the image of Shamash and the law back, they did not know what it actually means. This elite group, above the administrative group, were given all the resources required to decipher the message hidden in the image. With the gold replica as a draw, the profits of the temple and the population of the area grew. However, the secret knowledge contained in the image remained lost. Rules for the temple, including festivals at various times of the year, and a dress code for the priests were established. With the religion firmly re-established, there was only one problem. The priesthood of the garden still could not figure out what the image of Shamash and the law says. We can assume this because nowhere on the commemorative tablet we have today is there an explanation of what the tablet actually means. There can only be two reasons why. They either did not want to share the powerful knowledge it reveals, or at the time this commemorative tablet was created, they still did not know. It is more likely that they did not know because the commemorative text on the tablet ends with the following decree. To whoever in the future shall enter this palace as ruler, should you attempt to annul the rules of this temple, present another idol for worship, steal from the offerings brought to Shamash, declare the tablet to be your property, and remove it so the public cannot see it, or should you destroy the tablet, Shamash and the Lords of Judgment will ensure your demise. A great curse will bring about the destruction of your family through oppression and hunger.
To those who believe the tablet to be the most divinely inspired artistic creation in human history, it is the most important communication ever made by God to humanity. Some believe that this was the beginning of the tradition of hidden truth versus story told to control the masses. Regardless of these two positions, the version of the tablet we have today is a gift for the future from the king of that ancient time. The king had this commemorative tablet produced to protect the original from being lost again. However, sometime after 870 BCE, during the endless conflicts of the region, the tablet was once again looted and Shamash's temple destroyed. Again, only temporarily lost, it was rediscovered by King Nabu-apal-User, who reigned from 624 to 605 BCE. To protect the commemorative tablet for the future, he had it placed in a clay box with an inscription to keep it safe, because by that time it had already been broken. The original tablet and solid gold replica were either lost again in an uprising or abandoned to the progress of time. Regardless of the reason, the image on the tablet lay once again in hiding until being discovered in approximately 1881 CE. The line-by-line breakdown of the text on the tablet comes from the British Museum. They are the current keepers of the commemorative tablet found in 1881. Today, after such an extraordinary journey through time, senior think tank.ca offers a bold new interpretation of what the image on the tablet of Shamash and the law says. In the beginning, before Shamash evolved into the god that the tablet is dedicated to, he was the Sumerian sun god Utu. Utu's symbol is a sun emitting 8 bands of rays. Utu had a twin sister called Inanna. Inanna's symbol is an 8-pointed star. Utu is the light from the sun. Inanna is the sun's light reflecting off the planet Venus. At night, Inanna watches over the affairs of the world. The moon reflects Utu, the sun, to remind us that even in darkness we are not abandoned. The sun, or the influence energy has over us, is absolute. This understanding is one of the factors that united the solar and lunar cults. The symbol everyone is worshipping on Shamash's shield is half of each of their 2 symbols. Half the points of Inanna's reflection and half the rays of Utu's sun. This results in the transformation of Utu into the new god, Shamash. The symbol on Shamash's shield is an attempt to restore balance. As the original yin and yang, Shamash is using this symbol to try and explain that balance is the equal contribution of both the feminine and masculine, which means that the one principle all things are manifest from is polarity. Without acknowledgement that potential differences are a requirement of life, there can never be harmony, which is peace. At the point in time when Utu becomes Shamash, the trend in Mesopotamia was already leaning toward the suppression of the feminine in favor of the masculine. That occurred because of the cults dedicated to the myth of the man-god Marduk. How that myth did this will be explained in a future chapter. This policy spiraled the region into a state of perpetual imbalance. The only way to return the region to harmony is to unite the twins, Inanna and Utu. All other assessments as to what the tablet of Shamash says are pure speculation. Therefore, it is left to the reader to decide if the findings of this investigation feel true, or are they all merely coincidence. Chapter 2. What the idol on the tablet shows. Shamash's first achievement was to unite the lunar and solar cults. Above Shamash, there are 3 symbols etched on the wall: Sin, Shamash, and Ishtar. Lunar worship and solar worship have a 3rd symbol between them. It is something new to believe in, Shamash's new understanding. That symbol is the same one that appears on the idol or shield that everyone is looking at. In this new context, the first symbol, Sin, the moon, does not represent the actual moon. It represents the light that reflects off it. The 3rd symbol, Ishtar, is also Inanna. She is not the sun, but she is the light from the sun reflected off of Venus. This is a perfect example of how the meaning of symbols changes over time. As new understanding gets adopted, old symbols get reused. At this point, Inanna's symbol is clearly being used to also represent the solar aspect of the equation because it is opposite the moon symbol. Utu's symbol of the sun is nowhere to be found because Shamash himself now represents the sun, the source of light that reflects off both the moon and Venus. Not only is the symbol on Shamash's shield half Inanna and half Utu's, but once these two images are combined, the new symbol transforms into an accurate representation of how the sun, moon, and earth work together or influence each other. On this level, the circle in the middle of the idol represents the earth. The triangles are the orbital positions of the moon in relation to the earth from the sun, which would be right, exactly where Shamash sits. Left is full moon, right is new moon, up is first quarter, down is third quarter. The sun, moon, and earth are one because they all work together. An invisible ocean lies between the earth and the sun. Like a rock in the river, when the moon is full, the waters of the invisible ocean are forced to flow around it. These extra waves are reflected down to earth, making the waters at that time most active. When the moon is evenly split between dark and light, the waters are at their most calm. The waves on the top of the idol are from the sun. The waves on the bottom represent the tides. From this, the up and down triangles become the angle and degree of least resistance to the Sun-Earth circuit. The left to right triangles come to represent the physical plane, or point of maximum resistance. To those who could not visualize the invisible ocean, darkness or the nothing in outer space became the first negative. Whoever created the tablet knew this because before Shamash became the deliverer of the law. As Utu, he represented only the sun, the first positive. As a document celebrating light and wave, this is quite possibly the first recorded observation of the existence of a living circuit connecting and influencing all things. It is in this easily observed truth about the tides that we find a very important clue regarding the nature of what Shamash is trying to teach the world. All things are interconnected and bound by a first principle that can be observed functioning in the environment and greater world around you. Chapter 3. The tablet as a basic circuit. The next information we find on Shamash's tablet is an extension of the universal circuit understanding. As above, so below, as below, so above. This phrase found on the much more famous emerald tablet is also depicted on Shamash's tablet. To understand how, you must first understand how a basic circuit works, because it is the foundation of every electrical event in existence. Shamash is the solar deity. Energy is the first thing most people associate with the sun's light and heat. Before we begin, we must first ponder a question seldom asked. What is energy?
Energy is not the magical cause of things. It is a side effect of variables interacting. When people think of a basic circuit, they think of a battery, some wire, and a light bulb. When asked which of these three parts is the one energy comes from, they most often say with confidence, the battery. However, the true answer is both the battery and the wire. Energy means flow. Energy gets released every time physical molecules move. This happens whenever the requirements that obligate the circumstance that allows for the creation of a circuit to exist get met. Circuits of energy exist at every degree of scale throughout the entire universe. The following is a breakdown of the circumstance they are born from, and how changes in that circumstance affect the energy that gets released. There are four basic rules that energy always follows. Every circuit needs a power source. The amount of potential energy that flows from the power source is measured as voltage. Energy has one purpose: to get from one area to another. Because it naturally wants to do this, we can put it to work. Rule 1. Energy flows primarily from positive to negative, high pressure, concentrated or elevated, to low pressure, unfocused or oblivious. Energy from this source gives the sensation of being pushed. This aspect represents the battery. Without wire, it alone releases no energy. All factors other than polarity being equal and less being utilized, energy will always flow through the path of least resistance. Rule 2. The degree, extreme, and distance between two poles of any potential difference determines the amount of energy to be released if a resistance connects the positive and negative points. This plus principle 3 establish the spirit of the event. Example 1. The polarity of a slow-moving brook. Example 2. The polarity of a waterfall. Rule 3. The nature of the conductive medium connecting two poles of any potential difference determines the effect. This includes rate of vibration, nature of activity generated. The type, amount and speed at which the energy is released will travel. Regulation of the efficiency and the amount of time with which a resource can be utilized. All of these things together determine the type of work you can do with the energy being released. That work is called the load. The load is the burden that the source must have enough energy to give up or sacrifice in order to complete the job. Most people think electrons move from a battery down a wire like cars on a freeway. They do not. Each electron from the battery attaches to one side of an atom in the wire. That atom then sets an electron free to the next atom, causing a chain reaction down the wire. It is the wire in conjunction with the battery that allows energy to be released. Only when the two are put together do the molecules in the wire start moving. That movement is energy. We measure that movement as current. Another way to look at it. If a single plane existed and you wanted to build a mountain, the result would be a corresponding valley. Until rain falls to flow and connect those 2 points, there is no energy to draw. One could also view it like this. If you were to attempt to make contact with another person using one of the above items, how would the activity generated or spirit of the encounter change based on the conductive medium or nature of the item itself? Rule 4. When being utilized, secondary energy flows, or more accurately, is drawn from the negative with the result of the activity fueling or feeding the positive. Here's an example. The polarity of atmospheric pressure. When there is no pressure difference between the land and the water, no low or high pressure areas of potential difference exist. The sun comes out and a potential difference forms between the water and the land. High pressure flows to low pressure. Low pressure returns to or feeds the high pressure until equilibrium is reached, at which point flow stops. Energy from the side effect of negative being drawn to feed the positive gives the sensation of being pulled. Here's another example. The polarity of ocean currents. The sun warms surface water at the equator. Current flows to the negative pole. The negative pole cools the water. Cold, deep water gets utilized or drawn up to feed the cycle of surface water warming. And a final example. The polarity of suns to a black hole. Every sun is a contributor to the sum total of all the positive poles in the universe. The purpose of every black hole, which are actually spheres, not holes, is to contribute to universal movement as the negative pole that is required so that current has a place to flow. Light does not escape a black hole because black holes are, by design, the final destination of light. A black hole expands based on the amount of energy that gets compressed into it. All of the light and matter in the entire universe eventually finds a home in a black hole. This is where energy once again returns to its purest physical form. It remains there as dense matter, which is potential energy awaiting re-release. When the universal expansion maximum is reached, it begins to recede. This continues until all the matter and energy of the entire universe is forced back into a single point. It is the forcing of every black sphere into this singularity that triggers the next big bang. When that event occurs, the stored energy of every black hole is the fuel source that explodes out and flows from all these holding facilities. That is what feeds every positive point in the entire universe during the next great expansion.
Thoughts are things. Ideas focused upon long enough manifest as your physical reality. The symbol on the idol is the conductive medium. The common belief in its message is the thing that connects all of the people drawn to the event. The table the idol sits on is the load. It literally needs to be lifted by those working above on Shamash's behalf, so that the message of the symbol on the idol can be held above all else. In order to do this, Shamash must sacrifice a percentage of his energy to them so that they have the energy to do their jobs. Shamash is the sun, the positive or power source. He is bigger than everyone else. The negative is the smallest person in the room. This is not meant to imply that all physically large people are superior to people physically smaller than them. The size that is being depicted here refers to mentality, which also represents motive force. Shamash's headdress has 4 waves. His mind is full of activity. The smallest helper wears a helmet or solid cap. It has no waves on it. His mind has very little self-generated activity. He and Shamash work together as one, but are distinctly polar opposite aspects of the equation. He is helping raise the idol by keeping it steady. Without him physically touching the table, the final goal of raising the idol could not be realized. This completes the positive flows to negative aspect of how a circuit works. As above, so below. Just as the tides are influenced by the sun and moon, so are people similarly influenced by forces greater than themselves. All this activity draws many different types of people to it. There are only 2 types that matter, because they become resources. The first person drawn in also has no waves on his helmet. However, his headdress is larger because he is capable of more thought. He is not oblivious like the first person. He has room to expand his mind. He is the one drawn to the event who was willing to lend a helping hand, which he is. His helmet is also larger than the smallest person because he has proven his value, which is greater than that of the one who is smaller. He is new potential energy that can be utilized as future needs demand. However, in order to keep that person loyal, he, just like the people doing the heavy lifting, will require a percentage of Shamash's energy in order to maintain him, so that he can afford to remain and fulfill the role he has established within the circuit. The last person who was drawn to the event is clapping. They are strictly a spectator. As a convert, whose robes have become as the leader wears, they have the most value because the energy they give to the event in the form of simply telling others about this new thing that impressed them, requires no investment of Shamash's energy to maintain. His headdress is now a tiny copy of Shamash's, which means his mindset is now in harmony, or a reflection of the leaders. Just like a fire draws air, waves of activity are returning unseen through the floor from the most easily inspired and influenced guest back to Shamash. This completes the circuit by showing how the negative gets drawn to the positive aspect of the equation functions. By focusing only on the energy always flows. From positive to negative aspect of a circuit, humanity as a species is actually limiting the energy that is available to it by half. Take a moment to reflect on the incidents, both large and small, that have occurred in your life. Remember a circumstance when you were pushed into doing something. Remember a circumstance when you were drawn into doing something. Can you pinpoint a time you pushed someone else into doing something you wanted done? Or was there ever a time you took advantage of someone who was drawn to you? As above, so below. As below, so above. Everything at every level of existence that moves is caught somewhere in the great web of the infinite, ever-repeating divine pattern that is the dynamic of the circuit circumstance, which connects all things both large and small. Every degree of scale vibrates at its own frequency. From base material to base animal, all the way up to pure consciousness. One's perception of the experience of life is a reflection of the frequency they too are vibrating at. The movement and activity created by the divine pattern is so diverse that all appears to be chaos. Once one has taken the time to learn and observe the absolute influence of the divine pattern, chaos dissolves into an ultimate chartable order that is the first law functioning. The only way to experience freedom within it is to find peace with it. The way you do this is to become more aware of it. That way, when you do move, it is by conscious choice, not subconscious instinct or impulse. The mathematics of a basic circuit is governed by Ohm's law. To learn the expanded understanding of Ohm's law, which is in fact the divine pattern, also known as the first principle, and be shown how Ohm's formula applies to every aspect of your life, be sure to visit ohmslaw.ca. Once there, first watch the introductory video, Georg Simon Ohm's hypothesis. Next, pick the subject you would like to see the law applied to and enjoy the explanations in the encyclopedia found there. Chapter 4. The Tablet as Ohm's Law. The tablet of Shamash is broken into 3 distinct zones. The people locked in the box that make up the throne, the iron fist and the clenched hand all represent resistance. It is important to also note that Shamash is the only person with his feet on solid ground. He is grounded in the reality of the physical plane. The people doing the heavy lifting to get the idol off the ground represent the need to act. That activity also represents current. The final group contains one person maintaining stability. A second, the architect or planner overseeing the project. And a third person who is an appreciative spectator applauding the goal being realized. Realizing a goal is a new potential difference made manifest. Additionally, each of the 3 people are 3 different heights going from shortest to tallest. They are literally a scale of potential difference. In modern physics, we know that the variables of resistance, current, and potential difference are all governed by Ohm's law. If you happen to have stumbled across this book, it is book 1 of a 3-book series called Touched by the Light. SeniorThinkTank.ca has created this series to explain how Ohm's law of resistance applies to every aspect of your experience. For more information on this, please enjoy our other two series. The Common Human Experience, 3 volumes of original research, available at SeniorThinkTank.ca, and Become the Light, the 9-volume encyclopedia of examples of the influence Ohm's law has over your life. It is available at ohmslaw.ca. All other titles are available at SeniorThinkTank.ca. To explain how Ohm's law is represented on the tablet of Shamash, Jason Volthausen, the creator of ohmslaw.ca, will guide you through the rest of this chapter.
The entire concept that there must be a first principle that everything is emanating from is very old and appears across all cultures. The ancient Greeks called this concept logos. However, because they could not find an actual formula that fit the criteria logos demanded, logos eventually gets downgraded from the divine animating principle, all things are coming from, to the logic behind an argument, or reason. However, the concept of logos goes far beyond basic reasoning. It in fact goes back to a literal divine animating principle that they were attempting to find, but could not. When George Simon Ohm first published his law of resistance in 1827, he intended for it to be applied to other fields of study other than electricity. In fact, the only reason he applied it to electricity at all was because it was the field of study with the least amount of competition for explanations. He states this fact explicitly in the preface of his book, The Galvanic Circuit Investigated Mathematically. After his theory was proven true, society became so enamored with all the technological wonders electricity brought that his original hypothesis, just like the tablet of Shamash, was lost and forgotten. To make Ohm's law simpler to understand, in the Become the Light encyclopedia of books, we created a visual code to explain how it works. We call this visual code the Wheels of Life. You will find here a quick review of Ohm's law, after which we will demonstrate the same results of the formula hidden within the image on the tablet. The triangle pointing down equals resistance. The 3 waves equal current. The triangle pointing up equals potential difference. This section is the only thing you must memorize. Know it forward and backward. It is the foundation of everything. Phase 1 is the resistance phase, and it has 2 parts. If resistance is constant, it is the variable that does not move. When current decreases or goes down, potential difference also decreases or goes down. If resistance is constant, when current increases or goes up, potential difference must also increase or go up. The second phase of the formula is the phase of current. If current is constant, it is the variable that does not change. When resistance decreases or goes down, potential difference must also decrease or go down. When current is constant, it is the variable that does not move. When resistance increases or goes up, potential difference must also increase or go up. The third and final stage of Ohm's law is the stage of potential difference. If potential difference is constant, when current increases or goes up, resistance must decrease or go down. If potential difference is constant and is the variable that does not move, in this phase, when current decreases or is going down, resistance must be increasing or going up. Once again, when these 3 phases are put together in a diagram, ohmslaw.ca calls this the Wheels of Life. Now let's take a closer look at the symbol on Shamash's shield, the thing everyone on the tablet is paying respect to. It is the image they are worshipping, Shamash's gift to the world. It is the reason they are following his belief instead of the former solar and lunar cults. The solid circle in the middle of the symbol on the shield is the thickest or hardest part of the equation, resistance. The triangles going out from the center to the edge are establishing the potential difference in each direction. Note that the outer edge is not thick like the circle in the center. It is barely defined, which means it can fluctuate. Where the resistance circle meets the potential difference triangles, waves of current are being released. Let us assume for a moment that the tablet is like a snapshot, a single moment in time captured. Let us call this instant moment zero, the key or primer. What would the image on the idol look like if it were to pass through the phases of Ohm's law? In the resistance phase, if resistance is constant and current increases, potential difference must increase. When the center of the shield stays the same size, if current goes up, the shield must grow. If resistance is constant and current decreases, potential difference must also decrease. When the center of the shield stays the same size, if the current goes down, the shield must shrink. If current is constant and resistance increases, potential difference must also increase. When the current on the shield stays the same size, if the center gets bigger, the shield must once again grow. If current is constant and resistance decreases, potential difference must also decrease. When the current on the shield stays the same size, if the center gets smaller, the shield will shrink. If potential difference is constant and current increases, resistance decreases. When the outer edge of the shield is fixed, if the center gets smaller, it is because current has increased. And finally, if potential difference is constant and current decreases, resistance must increase. Which means, when the outer edge of the shield is fixed, if the current gets smaller, it is because the resistance in the center has grown. When viewed as was just demonstrated, the image on the idol of the tablet of Shamash is actually the most accurate non-mathematical way to explain Ohm's formula ever devised. Symbolically, the only way it could be better is if the solid ring in the middle were a square, the most resistant shape, but aesthetically that just wouldn't work as well. Shamash, as the sun god, through the symbol of a shield, wants first to protect you. Secondly, it wants followers of his knowledge to realize their potential. Shamash's gift to the world, the image on his shield, is the formula required to do so. It is a step-by-step guide of the variables and circumstance you must create in order to grow. The goal is to master the formula, which in turn manifests the largest possible shield of protection you can have over the direction your life takes. Centuries later, a similar symbol would be created that, though most followers are unaware of it, works just like the primer found on Shamash's shield. In Taoism, the law appears as the symbol yin-yang. Founded in 6th century China, Tao means the way, path, or principle. It is the source of, or motive force behind everything that exists. Most people only know it in its resting state of balance. However, it actually changes form as it moves through the process of creation. Movement and stillness. Energy in two states of acceleration. The solid center slows down, condenses, and becomes still. The outside is in continuous motion, accelerating from the center to the outer edge. If resistance, the center, is constant, the more potential you have, the bigger a wave you make, and the faster you rise above the resistance. Building and storing. Energy in two states, opposition and struggle. Separately building and storing power, yet remaining connected and unified. When in a state of constant action, the greater the struggle or resistance, the more knowledge you are forced to learn and store. Balance and harmony. energy as it appears in a state of harmony and balance, both poles evenly melding into one another, mutually supporting each other's distinct forces and attributes. Constant potential is reached when the individual accepts that struggle is the mechanism through which growth occurs. All creative and destructive actions are the result of polarity in different phases. In that belief system, it is through meditation that the way is revealed. The individual learns that, through the state of mental stillness, thoughts can be regulated. Once this ability has been established, even outside the meditative state, though emotions continue to drive actions, pursuing every thought impulse becomes an absolute choice. As was stated earlier, the symbol on Shamash's shield primarily symbolizes polarity in its balanced state. It is 50% of Inanna's 8-pointed star, the feminine, and 50% of Utu's 8 bands of rays, which is the masculine. Inanna and Utu are ancient Mesopotamian god twins, 2 parts of one. Inanna is the queen of heaven and the night. Utu is the sun, god of justice, morality, and truth. Our moment zero primer is also the instant of perfect balance or harmony between the potential differences of the masculine and feminine aspects of the principle, exactly like the yin-yang symbol.
It is important to keep in mind that the tablet of Shamash is actually the tablet of Shamash and the law. The message of Shamash, as the bearer of the law, is literally the first principle from which all things are manifest. He has come to share it so that his followers can understand why everything is unfolding the way it is. You can't succeed in life until you know the rules. Without the law as a guide, you spend your life in the dark. Shamash is the light that illuminates the way nature obligates one to live so that they may grow. The law is all that physically is, and all that can ever be.
Chapter 5. The Tablet as the Golden Ratio. The Golden Ratio is also known as the arithmetic of creation. Scholars have hypothesized that the leaders in Mesopotamia knew of the Golden Ratio because of this image. The Tablet of Shamash is next the earliest known attempt at an explanation of the law as the arithmetic of creation. The law that is being referred to is the first principle to which all things are bound. By placing the Golden Ratio over the image of Shamash, it becomes clear that this is no coincidence. However, they have yet to find a reference to the actual mathematics of the Golden Ratio in the writings of that time. What if the answer has been hiding in plain sight for all to see? The Golden Ratio is a number, 1.618. The sequence that creates it is called the Fibonacci numbers. They are 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, etc. to infinity. There are 3 pairs of literal Golden Ratio spirals hidden in clear view. Do you see them? They are located here, here, and here. Why they are in each of these locations will be explained in an upcoming chapter. After the number 13 has been reached, every number in the sequence divided by the previous number, when averaged out, equals 1.618. Any number divided by the next number in the sequence, when averaged out, equals 0.618. The number 1.618, also known as phi, is essentially a pillar, or rod, running through the center of the mathematical reality of all things. To understand the principle of how the sequence is created, one simply has to follow the creation of the first 13 numbers of the sequence, as the Tablet of Shamash clearly teaches one to do. Beneath Shamash are 2 figures. 1 plus 1 equals 2. 2 plus 1 equals 3. This now adds Shamash to the equation. 3 plus 2 equals 5. If you look closely above Shamash holding up the idol, there are 2 sets of hands. 2 silent helpers. Five plus 3 equals 8. The 3 guests at the ceremony. Eight plus 5 equals 13. The entire scene is happening on a floor made up of waves with 4 star symbols strategically placed. The placement of the stars creates 5 gaps at the base of the waves. At this, the point of reproductive maturity, the wave is firmly established. It starts growing beyond its contained originating group. As the foundation that is holding everything up, it is at this point that Phi repeats forever. It would be incomprehensible for the designer of this carving to construct the exact visual representation of the golden ratio, also known as the golden sections. Mathematical requirements into this work without some basic knowledge of the existence of the sequence. This is especially true given the fact that they chose the exact number of participants and separated them into the proper order of distinct groups. Each group is confined to their own zone as the formula requires. They are all in their own separate space or compartment. Even the square throne that Shamash sits on, which for obvious aesthetic reasons is not in the proper golden ratio location, is the exact size it should be in relation to all the other separated regions of the image. By attempting to teach that the golden ratio and Fibonacci sequence are connected, the tablet of Shamash provides a new way of looking at both. Create a square 1 inch by 1 inch. Create a second. 1 plus 1 equals 2. If you wish to continue expanding out, the next square must logically be 2 inches. If you wish to continue expanding out, the next square must logically be 3 inches. If you wish to continue expanding out, the next square must logically be 5 inches. This process is the basic Fibonacci calculator. We are only using 1 inch by 1 inch to teach how the divine proportion works. Once you know the size of the first square you are building from, this actually works at every degree of scale. It is in this form that we traditionally view the golden ratio. However, in the tablet of Shamash, he is actually interacting with the physical world, which means we should be entering a 3rd dimension. Once this 3rd dimension is added, you see that it becomes a spiral. That 3-dimensional spiral looks like a staircase. It is either going up or down, depending on if you are climbing up or spiraling down. We will explain the relevance of this in the next chapter. The golden ratio proves minor and major proportional harmony in nature. The small part stands in the same proportion to the large part, as the large part stands to the whole. As above, so below. As below, so above. The whole exists because the first principle, or law, sets limits that keep everything contained. The scale of the whole increases in direct proportion to the amount of energy generated to realize and maintain potential differences. Those who discovered the hidden truth behind the golden ratio formula were sworn to secrecy because of the powerful implications this knowledge contains. Chapter 6. The tablet as social control. Just like how the pattern of the golden ratio stabilizes and repeats when it reaches the number 13, so do the layers of meaning hidden within the tablet of Shamash. On the next pass through the tablet, Shamash represents a king or ruler of the masses. Shamash is a king sitting on his throne. The 2 figures under Shamash's throne are upright like humans, but have distinctly animal feet and legs. The feet and legs represent the base of a person. This symbolizes that those who have not grown beyond their base animal instincts must be contained. The two pillars that make up the sides of the throne are made of vertical lines like bars on a prison cell. Before the little animals or monsters can contribute to the bigger picture, they must first be conditioned, broken of, or disciplined beyond their animal nature. For the young, this cell is called school. For non-conforming adults, this cell is called prison. For conforming adults, this cell is called debt and taxes. Once broken of their base nature, two types of people emerge. First are those who are fit for labor, the ones capable of doing the heavy lifting. The second are those who are intelligent enough to avoid the heavy lifting. They contribute by administering the system. All newcomers, either born or wishing to settle in the area, must agree to the king's rules and be subjected to re-education. Their robes must become as the king's robes are. By sacrificing their own ideals to the rules of the king, they literally make up the throne that he rules over. Shamash rules with an iron fist. The first and most efficient way to control the masses is through fear. Disobedience has consequences that threaten one's physical well-being. Notice Shamash's fist is not clenched. His hand is being offered like a handshake. It is an invitation for you to join him. The first option is always to let the newcomers choose to participate of their own free will. However, it is imperative that they understand there are rules which Shamash alone, as the bearer of the iron fist, determines. We know this because his other hand is clenched into a fist, ready to strike at any moment. The symbol Shamash holds historically has been known as the ring and rod symbol. It is only here on the tablet of Shamash that the true name of this symbol is revealed. Shamash holds the rod of dew, a motivation stick. It is not the rod of sitting around thinking about doing. The ring and rod of dew symbol has two parts. The ring is ever flowing with a hollow center. The rod of dew is the discipline to break the cycle. Shamash's hand grasps the rod, not the ring. Rod of dew means discipline to do. Do you have the discipline to whip yourself into shape and break the habits that keep your life spinning around in the empty circle? If you develop the discipline to do, your threshold to withstand pressure expands, which in turn leads to increased potential or more living. Is your current circumstance acceptable? Are you continually allowing outside forces to determine your fate? Has your life been reduced to a cycle of activities others benefit from more than you? Do you have what it takes to motivate yourself? Or are you reliant on others forcing you to do by beating the best out of you?
"13 is a sacred number because it is the point of reproductive maturity after which Phi is born. If you view the unbroken line that runs through the golden ratio as a wave, and each of the two parts as two triangles, one pointing up and one pointing down, a formula showing what is required to maintain the continuous wave appears. If current is to remain constant and either resistance or potential difference increases, the other must also experience a directly proportional increase as well, or the circuit will be broken. In mathematics, this equation would be I equals V over R, which is in fact Ohm's law. The large triangle pointing inward or down shows how many must never leave or see beyond the resistance phase. They must be kept down, distracted as they are harnessed to create the wave, which is the active phase. That way, the smaller triangle pointing outward or up can rise above in the potential phase. The golden section is the balance required to maintain stable growth. That being forced down initially becomes matter. It then evolves into resource, the reason for all activity. Once utilized, it becomes waste, bother, and finally concern. What does the majority must never leave the resistance constant reality actually mean? The three different phases of Ohm's law create three separate worlds. Each are a different plane of reality that share space and interact with each other, but are fundamentally unique in their operation and requirements. The wave is created by all the activity of the people trying to escape the resistance constant reality. Their goal is to one day reach the potential constant reality. Ohm's wheels of life teach you what is required to achieve this objective. When life begins, the vast majority are, by the nature of youth, on an upward trajectory. Youth believes that all things are easily possible because they have not experienced the resistance of reality yet. The world is a hopeful place of limitless potential. They are young, it is also new, and they just need to know. The newness of life leads to vast amounts of action taken. If resistance is constant and current increases, potential increases. All of this inevitable activity is the foundation of one aspect of economy. This is the nature of phase 2 of the resistance phase. It is where the vast majority of people start their life. Those who have no interest, ability, or willingness to do things eventually find themselves living in a world of despair. Most people wrongly believe that mental illness is the source of people's problems. It is in reality a side effect. The despair one feels comes from their lack of action. If resistance is constant and current decreases, potential decreases. This is phase 1 of the resistance phase. You can learn more about this in the Become the Light series of books. People succeed or fail to varying degrees based on their ability to navigate the first principle, which is why learning and mastering the wheels of life is of paramount importance. Most people are completely oblivious to the first great law of life. However, the law is the law, which means that experience teaches the same lesson to everyone, regardless of race, culture, or belief.
Life is hard. As we age, the naivety of youth gets shed. It gets revealed that the limitless potential of life is not as easily attained as one assumed. When this happens, the blind optimism of youth changes when the individual begins the downward trajectory of middle age. Once the individual realizes they are not going to achieve all of the goals they set for themselves, the motivation behind their activity changes from hope to fear. If they are not going to easily achieve more, they fear losing the things they have achieved. While the youth of a new generation inflates the wave with their hope of all that can be, those in middle age from the previous generation simultaneously add their energy through their fear of all that physically is. It is only when the individual has lost all ability or willingness to act that the state of hopelessness gets reached. Once again, more information on this will be discussed in the Become the Light series of books.
This three-dimensional version of the golden ratio is an important visualization tool. Whenever someone tells you something must grow forever, it directly goes against natural law. Like a heart beating or inhaling and exhaling, the rhythm of nature keeps all things in motion of either ascent or descent. Are you climbing up in an attempt to realize your potential? The instant that effort wanes, the wave begins to recede, and you get pulled back down to the level of resistance, potential, and energy that you can manage. Use this tool to see how much more volume of effort will be required to reach a goal. Shamash is trying to teach you how to assess how much resistance you will have to endure and energy you will need to expend to achieve the potential you hope to achieve. Can you reach the next level and maintain that energy flow once you get there? The triangle pointing down is the symbol for resistance because the top represents the hardest or most difficult point, and the bottom represents the softest or easiest point. When resistance increases, the path to the top gets harder because every rotation up takes longer. When resistance decreases, the path to the bottom gets easier because every rotation down happens faster than the last. This is why not overcoming resistance is a slippery slope. The more resistance you engage, the more frustration you feel. Frustration is a completely natural reaction to increasing resistance. However, if you let frustration win too often and you create a habit of abandoning things, a life of achievement will always elude you. The first thing frustration always does is activate your path of least resistance instinct. You can learn more about this in the book Overcoming the Path of Least Resistance. Despair and hopelessness are a downward spiral. Even people trapped in the first phase contribute to the energy released in the wave. When despair or hopelessness is your constant, as you push further down the spiral, the state periodically becomes unbearable. To temporarily relieve the despair and hopelessness, you act out in aggressive ways. The energy released from hope and fear, for the most part, is constructive to the system. The energy released from despair and hopelessness is almost always destructive to the system. The hopelessness you think they are experiencing is actually despair because they still have youth on their side. True hopelessness cannot be experienced until later in life. That is the difference between the phases and the age of the individual experiencing it. In this way, Ohm's wheels of life work just like the chakra system. The social system itself is powered by the energy of all the individuals contributing to it. That is why it is important that the vast majority of people never leave the resistance phase. It is the personal responsibility of every individual to rise up through the system and reach the potential constant reality. However, it is not in the interest of the system to educate you on the process required to do this.
The nature of the motivation issue. When someone faces an obstacle or resistance, if they cannot come up with a potential solution, their inaction eventually spirals into a state of constant despair. When they come up with a solution by themselves, that increase of potential is inspirational. It is that inspiration that motivates them to act. You cannot tell anyone what to do because when you do, they do not have the inspiration that comes from figuring it out themselves. When you tell someone what to do, it is just viewed as more work. Work, to most people, is just another obstacle or resistance, which is not inspirational at all. It is the hope within an idea that oneself generates that becomes the motive force that obligates them to increase the intensity of their focused energy through action. Without this inspired hope, people do not wholeheartedly try. Until they generate a purpose that inspires them, they stay trapped at their present level of development. Any advice one individual can give another presupposes that the second person has the same talents and abilities as the person giving the advice. Everyone has established different potentials through the choices they have made. That is why what works for one person doesn't work for everyone. Even reading this here is not enough. People must experience the truth to know it. So how does one get around this fundamental anchor that is holding them still? Energy calibration is how you do this. eCal is a program that teaches you the terms and conditions of existence. It does this so that you can unlearn the false reality you were taught within the social prison called school. eCal does not tell you what to do. It teaches what you will be required to do regardless of the goal you choose. In this way, it has been created to inspire you to try. It does this by calibrating your actions to the reality Ohm's law demands every person must follow. eCal information is designed to imprint a new vision of reality. Its purpose is to help you rise up, out of dependence on the social system at its lowest levels. It is your personal responsibility to educate yourself. eCal is the master teaching of the first principle. The first principle, also known as the divine pattern, is the true nature of reality. It is the hidden truth those looking down on you from the potential constant reality do not want you to master. ECAL teaches the 13 steps required by physics to manifest goals into reality. Everyone that exists between the two dotted lines makes up the middle class. For a comprehensive analysis on the nature of the resistance constant reality, the action constant reality, and the potential constant reality, be sure to read Become the Light. Book 1, The Three Worlds of Ohm's Law. To experience ECAL, be sure to purchase a copy of Energy Calibration, 2 words that fix everything. Both books are available at ohmslaw.ca. Chapter 7. The Tablet as Development of Identity. Just like how the pattern of the golden ratio stabilizes and repeats when it reaches the number 13, so do the layers of meaning hidden within the tablet of Shamash. On the next pass through the tablet, Shamash represents how one's identity develops. This chapter is inspired by John Bradshaw's On Homecoming lecture series. It is the briefest overview possible of that information. This will only deal with one aspect of that system. It deals with how childhood trauma influences the development of self. That system has many levels and layers of sophistication, each of which shows how traits are developed based on your response to trauma.
You have whole families that are in this obedience without content. Whole groups of people that are dominated by obedience without content. This is very dangerous. It is enormously dangerous.
Here we will be focusing specifically on the development of the bully personality. It is the one aspect the tablet of Shamash is attempting to illustrate and warn about. The Bradshaw On Homecoming program is essential viewing for every individual who plans to grow. Every person born into every culture is fundamentally damaged by that culture. If the true nature of the individual is contrary to the beliefs of that culture, as soon as the community standard begins molding the child, they are forced to either suppress or repress the needs of their authentic self. Every culture that represses women must also suppress the feminine aspect of self within men. As a result, those cultures quickly get reduced into a screaming, chest-beating, male-dominant, base animal state. With this comes a perpetual state of imbalance. Shamash's greatest warning is that when genuine calamity strikes, every capable, able-bodied person, based on ability, not gender, will be required to overcome it. To not accept this is a testament to mass cultural delusion and madness. All cultures, in essence, shame people into submission. When this shaming is done in the home, the individual is raised in a feedback loop of shame that has been created through generations of repeated behavior. When it is done through the educational system, it is an unintended consequence of the need to process all children identically so that a functional society can be maintained. There are 2 kinds of shame. The first is healthy shame. It is based on one's own modesty, which is the way an individual finds and sets their limits. The second is toxic shame based on the projections of the views and beliefs of both the parents and the culture the individual is raised in. When a conflict happens between the natural emotional limit of the child and the family system raising them, one of 2 types of neurosis get manifested. They are the repressed child and the suppressed child. These 2 neuroses wound the child and forever remain at the core of the individual. As they grow, these people become and remain children in adult bodies. These adult children remain trapped until they are finally set free. This only happens once the individual gives themselves permission to rediscover and express their authentic self. The repressed child is the result of the system's inability to acknowledge the uncomfortable realities of life that children are curious about. These children are shamed for looking into things parents and teachers are themselves not comfortable dealing with. The suppressed child is the result of the system's inability to keep up with the potential of the child. These children are shamed or made to feel like they are less to keep them contained. It is important to note that this is rarely consciously done. Until one becomes aware, people can only react to a given situation based on their individual family programming, the nature of which most people don't even think about. Shamash has two little confined people holding him up. We are all half of our mother and half of our father. One of these little people represents the feminine aspect of self, the other is the masculine. The one facing right is the repressed self. They are scratching to try and escape. The one facing left is the suppressed self. Their shoulder is trying to hold everything up. People who have become toxically shame-based do not know how to set limits, because the limits their healthy shame attempted to establish were not regarded as valid. In order to avoid dealing with the constant pain of the underdeveloped inner child, the individual seeks mood-altering distractions to numb and block out the shameful self-image that has developed. This desire to alter one's mood is the source of most addictions to food, alcohol, drugs, sex, entertainment, work, and control. In a culture that constantly projects ideals that the average person can never measure up to, individuals get shamed into developing either a fiercely competitive mindset or a total aversion toward all types of competition. The loss of interest in healthy competition is profoundly destructive to the building of the system. The obsession with competition eventually smothers the system once there is no one left to compete with.
The entire purpose of Ohm's wheels of life as the first principle is to demonstrate through examples the cause-effect-result relationship between the variables of resistance, current, and potential difference. The previous result becomes the next cause as you shift phases and move through the system. Once in the new phase, how the variables interact changes based on the rules of that phase. That changing of rules triggers a corresponding change in the experience you are having. All experience is in fact a reflection of energy law and your interaction with it. The wheels of life are made up of two circles. The first circle contains the resistance and potential difference phases. The second circle contains the current or action phase. All increasing of potential, which is growth, happens in the second wheel. To make this easier to visualize how this applies to Ohm's wheels of life, we must temporarily flip the tablet of Shamash. Shamash and the two wounded inner children are isolated in their own space or loop. People who have been toxically shamed have great difficulty leaving the first wheel of life. That is because their core identity has formed around the role they play within the family system. In our first example, if resistance is constant and the effect is seen as a decrease in the current, the result will be a corresponding downturn in potential difference. In the beginning, shame is a natural, physical response. We see an obstacle that makes us spiritually uncomfortable, so we try to avoid that circumstance again. Having the body paralyzed by healthy shame is not bad, as long as those around you respect the limit that you naturally have. However, when you encounter resistance in the form of shaming, if current, your ability to move, decreases, which all children experience because they are dependent, the result is that potential difference also goes down. That is why prolonged exposure to toxic shame affects our confidence. In our second example, if resistance is constant and the effect is seen as a decrease in the potential difference, the result will be a corresponding decrease in current or activity. When you encounter resistance in the form of shame, if for whatever reason potential difference decreases, current or movement also goes down. If you are constantly shamed for the questions you ask, which is a reflection of how your authentic self thinks, you start to believe that your natural thoughts are wrong. If this consistently happens, you will eventually suppress those thoughts and stop acting upon them. When this occurs, you stop performing at the frequency you were naturally born at. As we move into the upper level of the resistance phase, once again the variable that the effect is felt in determines the nature of the result. When faced with a resistance or an environment that is constantly shame-based, the more potential you have, the more energy you can focus on resolving the circumstance. The one thing children have is a lot of energy. When something you find shameful is being done to you and you have the ability to move, your body shifts gears up to the current phase. All factors other than polarity being equal, unless being utilized, energy will always flow through the path of least resistance. This means that your first instinctual response is to get away, hide from or avoid the person who is making you feel uncomfortable. This is the nature of the flight portion of fight or flight. If the action you take is to run and find a good hiding place, the effect will be that the person violating leaves you alone because they can't find you. You survive the encounter, but you do not grow as a result. That is because there is no increase of potential in this course of action. Avoiding the problem through mood-altering addictions always leads back to the original circumstance. This is the nature of codependency because your own potential never gets established. You are shaken by the event, but are relieved when the pressure of the circumstance goes down. You must determine if you are fleeing the physical resistance of the circumstance or the mental pressure required to overcome it. The less pressure you can tolerate, the fewer resistive circumstances you seek out. This can quickly develop into a lifelong habit of trying to avoid problems. Children, as dependents, have no choice but to return to the offender. This lack of establishing potential creates an identity that believes they are powerless. In both of these first examples, either by available energy or greater potential from birth, these people are higher on the scale than those who do not leave the negative aspect of the resistance phase. When living in a constant high-resistance, shame-based environment, the more your energy is inspired to flow, the more ways your potential will seek and find to do so. This is the nature of subconscious emotional response. A violation forces you to act, but instead of trying to get away from it, you engage it. When you charge into situations, you engage with only the potential you were born with. In this circumstance, you switch gears to the potential difference phase. Once in the potential constant reality, there are 4 possible outcomes. Outcome 1. The emotional outburst of energy you threw at the problem cannot be increased or maintained to a level that is greater than the resistance. A tantrum, tears, or kicking and screaming does not move the problem. The resistance is superior to you at your present level of physical and emotional development. You do not have the ability to stay focused long enough to overcome the problem because it is increasingly more sophisticated than you anticipated. This particular resistance, obstacle, or problem will always win every time you encounter it unless you mentally grow by developing new ways to engage it. Outcome 2. The effect of the emotional outburst energy you threw at the problem only increases the intensity of the resistance you have encountered. Your tantrum, tears, or kicking and screaming have not only failed to overcome it, it has created an even harsher circumstance. As a result, you stop emotionally lashing out because it, as a tactic, was counterproductive or ineffective. The resistance is not only superior to you in your present state, it is fighting back as a result of your actions. When this occurs, your focus shifts from the problem to escape. You switch gears to the instinctual flight phase in an attempt to retreat from the resistance so you can avoid being crushed by it. Outcome 3. You keep increasing the emotional outburst of energy you are projecting at the problem until it is greater than the resistance. It took the increasing of your focused energy, but your tantrum, tears, or kicking and screaming worked. As a result, the resistance bowed to the will of your sheer emotion-driven attack. When this tactic for dealing with obstacles succeeds, it gets reinforced as an acceptable way of dealing with problems. This is the first step down the path toward a sense of entitlement. Outcome 4. The emotional outburst energy causes the resistance to immediately bow to your will. A tantrum, tears, kicking and screaming instantaneously dissolve the problem. If your actions are never questioned, you are left with increased available energy to do whatever you want with. This is the first step toward egomania. When one throws themselves emotionally into circumstances and succeeds, they develop the mentality that they are superior to everything and everyone. These people develop the habit of charging into or bullying their way through problems as their default tactic of engagement. This brings us back to Shamash. In this phase, he represents the nature of a bully. He has never left the first wheel. He is both repressed rage and suppressed shame. His toxic, shame-based personality is fundamentally insecure at its core. He does not know what healthy growth is. He knows no limits because he has always lashed out to get what he wants and gotten away with it. He is bigger than everyone else because he is a full-blown megalomaniac. Shamash, in this form, is living in his own little bubble. He has created a circuit to sustain himself physically, but in reality, he has built a prison cell that he is hiding in. He has done this so he does not have to deal with the complex emotionality of interacting with life. This whole system of identity molding creates many types of fundamentally damaged people. The two that the tablet of Shamash is dealing with are the bully and his codependent. Both of these personality types have had their potential locked or frozen in time because it was either suppressed or repressed by the environment they were raised in. People who do not set limits and push constantly until they get what they want are typically very successful in the physical realm. They know how to throw their weight around and intimidate to get what they want. Most people successful in business are this personality type. However, the majority of them have little to no diversity of perception. They only see the world their way. They care not for others' feelings or needs. Their minds are closed because they are too afraid to venture outside their bubble. No person can operate without social interaction to feed the needs of the wounded child at their core. These people will always find yes people to surround themselves with. These yes people have come to believe in their own powerlessness because of all the shaming they have been subjected to. Shamash projects strength. The smallest person, his codependent, has a bent spine. He has no backbone, which means he is easily bullied. He lacks the confidence to stand up straight. Every bully needs someone to abuse, or their identity will collapse. The codependent's entire identity has formed around accepting their role as victim. The shame they were raised with becomes the foundation of a feedback loop. Whenever they find themselves within the sphere of an abuser, they stay even after everyone else has abandoned the circuit the abuser created. They remain because they never learned self-worth. If this is you, there is hope. That hope is learning, accepting, and doing exactly what Ohm's wheels of life require of you. The tablet of Shamash, and the law is a perfect reflection of the resistance phase of Ohm's wheels of life. At this level, Shamash represents a severely damaged adult child. One whose damaged inner child is still determining the outcome. Are you willing to do all the hard work and heavy lifting required so that your potential can increase? Until you accept this as a requirement made by the physics of life, you will never know true freedom. This is true of both the bully and the codependent identity types. How do we know this is the truth? At this level of interpretation, each of the three people are the same person going through the process of standing upright. The first thing that must expand is your headdress or mentality. This can only be done by educating yourself with information that will never be taught in school. Those who are not willing to do this type of heavy mental lifting remain codependent to others. They will remain, keeping the bully just stable enough to function until they are finally discarded. The bully who is not willing to do this mental work spends their whole life torturing others. Without a functional model to escape from themselves, eventually they become so isolated that they only have themselves to torture, punish, and torment.
The only way out is through. In both cases, each person is out of balance and must correct this by engaging, overcoming, and getting in harmony with the factors that created their identity. It is for this reason that you must take the time to study yourself. It is only in the second wheel of life that true growth occurs. If current or intensity of focused energy is constant and resistance increases, potential must also increase. All of life is resistance training in different forms. It is only through the overcoming of physical, mental, and spiritual resistance that a greater potential version of you gets established. The hardest aspect of self-improvement is the development of discipline. The reason this is so hard is because toxically shamed people do not know how to establish limits. They have never developed the ability to either say no or accept no from others. They often want it all and more. They feel justified in saying or doing whatever it takes to get what the wounded child within wants. Toxic environments assign people roles that become anchors for the development of a healthy identity. Without the fulfillment of their assigned role, what purpose does the individual have? The bad things that happen to you either crush you into your highest form or become the reason for growth to occur. The only control you have is how you react to your circumstance. Bad things happen to everyone all the time. Everyone is always struggling with something, regardless of the persona they project. The circumstance of life dictates that every person must sustain their physical livelihood. This is done through the transferring of kinetic energy through production into currency, so that one can buy the things they need to survive. It is up to you to make the best of your bad situation. The way you do this is to learn as much as you can from the struggle you are facing, so you can overcome it. The more you learn, the more confidence you will have. This process forces you to stand ever straighter until you become your own little master. If you're struggling with repressed or suppressed feelings, they are the thing holding you back, not the bully. There are only two options to proceed. Will you focus your energy on avoiding the difficult feelings inside by continuing to distract yourself through whichever compulsive behavior you have established as a coping mechanism? Or will you do the heavy lifting and begin to deal with the complex emotions that are keeping you trapped in the box within yourself? Sometimes, because of our trauma, the bully holding us back is actually ourself. Are you punishing yourself or beating yourself up for having feelings we were never allowed to express? The only way out is through. In order to overcome the pain, you must embrace the pain. To do this, you must observe, take responsibility for, and work your way through all the resistance that created your wounded inner child. As soon as you do this, you will be able to turn and walk away, not run or flee, from the toxic environment you feel beholden to. The day you finally reach your limit, a switch in your brain gets flipped. With the finding of your limit, you will inherit the stability of mind to know that you have established the potential required to restart life on a clean slate. All life follows energy law by default. That is why it is the first principle. It is the reason a chipmunk finds food and hoards it without thought. It is also the reason a tree's roots naturally avoid rock and grow through the richest soil available. What will this new life of yours look like? There are two choices. You either follow the path of least resistance into another circumstance that will most likely have been established by a carbon copy of the bully you just escaped, or you will be required to master entrepreneurship. The second option is the only one that truly allows the individual to experience true freedom and the costs that come with it. As terrifying as this prospect is for most people, rest assured, the process for establishing a successful entrepreneurial venture also follows the exact pattern of the first principle, just as the tablet of Shamash predicts. This chapter has used revised page examples from the book Ohm's Law of Life, the terms and conditions of existence. They have been applied to the work of John Bradshaw. This has been done to show more clearly the why behind his groundbreaking work. It is advised by the creator of this work that every person should take the time to explore his two series, Bradshaw on the Family and Bradshaw on Homecoming. Until you better understand the nature and variety of trauma that you may be struggling with, proceeding beyond this point will get increasingly difficult to accept. Chapter 8. The Tablet as Institutional Structure. Just like how the pattern of the golden ratio stabilizes and repeats when it reaches the number 13, so do the layers of meaning hidden within the tablet of Shamash. The purpose of every business and institution is to generate surplus energy for the people who create it. They do this through their function. The function of every business or institution is the fulfilling of whichever need it has been created around. For example, the purpose of a restaurant is not to make food, it exists to make money. The food it sells is the function it performs to achieve that goal. On the next pass through the tablet, Shamash represents a business owner, CEO or president. Shamash is the CEO of the corporation or institution. On this pass, the tablet represents all business. We will view it as a retail shopping chain, the hypothetical Shamash clothing company. The two figures above Shamash's throne are the people who work in all the stores. The people who must be there every day doing the heavy lifting. The idol is on a slight angle because the business is off the ground. It is up and running. The person holding the leg of the table the idol is resting on represents the individual store managers. They keep the operation stable by not allowing it to sway off target. The person behind the manager represents a district manager. He has one hand free, which he is using to direct the whole scene. The other hand has been offered to the manager, who is grasping it as a type of additional counterbalance. The person a manager can call upon for extra support when needed. The next person is the customer. Note that each of their headdresses are getting increasingly larger. The district manager is greater than the manager, but the customer is the most important part of the equation. The customer is applauding, which means they are satisfied. The energy then flows from the customer to make up the throne Shamash, the business owner, sits upon. But how do we know this for sure? Count the number of little squares that make up the bottom of the cell the two little people are trapped in. There are 2 rows of 15. 15 times 2, plus the 2 people we can see in the box, is 32. There are 32 levels to the pillar that holds up the roof Shamash sits under. The number of customers determines the height of your ceiling, or profits. The base of the pillar is flowing out of 2 golden ratio spirals. The top of the pillar is capped with the same golden ratio spirals. Everything flows from the law and is limited by the law. Every business and institution is a living circuit that must follow this pattern of activity, or it collapses in on itself. Primary energy flows from positive to negative. Secondary energy gets drawn from negative back to positive. The size of Shamash represents the potential of the idea behind the venture. The potential creates an inflated expectation within the owner and investors. These two things together are the motive force behind all the effort.
The idea must generate enough surplus energy to justify the keeping of the circuit alive, which means that the first priority is always to make sure the people the circuit needs to function get fed. The amount each gets compensated is based on the value of their contribution. Those who simply show up and fulfill basic tasks that require little responsibility get paid the least. They're not strong enough to do harder work and are unwilling to educate themselves, so they have more to offer. These are the people who eventually become dependents, anchors that burden the circuit's flow. Their negativity only grows as profits rise and their compensation does not increase. They cannot accept that unskilled labor only has so much value because anyone can do it. They do not take personal responsibility for their life choices and often blame others for the circumstances they find themselves in. People doing manual labor get paid more than clerks because they do harder work. However, their compensation is also limited by the number of people available to get the job done. Without the added value of knowledge, these people must survive strictly on their physical strength. The instant that strength fails, they will be cast aside and replaced like an oxen or mule with a broken leg. The third person is the one who brings new knowledge to the organization. They have the ability to negotiate higher compensation based on the value of their expertise. Once again, the customer is the most important part of the equation because they feed everyone. Labor by its very nature is exploitive. That is because every component must add more value than they are compensated for, so that surplus energy from customer purchases can be gathered to satisfy the expectations of the person or group that initiated the circuit in the first place. The cost an organization has to pay to have each of these 3 roles performed is determined by the amount of competition that exists at each level. If an endless supply of unskilled laborers exists, then competition for a single position is high, which means the value of that contribution goes down. If any part of this equation stops functioning or gets thrown out of balance due to out-of-control expectation, intolerable levels of abuse, or outright disillusionment, the circuit will be broken and everyone involved will once again be left to fend for themselves. Everyone at every level is free to leave whenever they want if the amount they are being compensated is not satisfactory. However, once settled, most never do leave. That is because the compensation, no matter where they go, changes little. The only way to receive more is to increase the potential they have established within themselves. This eventually means risking what they have to try and establish the creation of their own circuit. Most are unwilling or unable to attempt this based on the sum total of the choices they have made, which has created the circumstance they find themselves in. Eventually, everyone settles into a role within the hierarchy of productivity. Everyone must generate their worth or starve. Because of this, there is no need to enslave people. People enslave themselves through their own lack of adaptability. To build your own circuit or create your own opportunity takes a tremendous amount of resources and requires the ability to overcome every resistance that comes along the way in the process of doing so. This is a task that is so daunting that the average person instead settles into their role within a system created by another. Each of the roles demonstrated in this image predict the requirements and inevitable outcomes of both business and institutional growth. Take a moment to identify the equivalent role titles for any institution you can think of or have ever worked for. Who makes the rules? Who keeps the machine up and running? Who oversees the daily operation? Who enforces the rules that come from above? From whom is the energy being drawn to justify keeping the machine running? In education, Shamash would be the Minister of Education. The heavy lifters would be the teachers and building caretakers. The manager would be the principal. The district manager would be the head of the regional school board. The customers are the students. In religion, using Catholicism in this example, Shamash would be the Pope. The heavy lifters would be the priests, deacons, and building caretakers. The manager would be the bishops. The district managers would be the cardinals and archbishops. The congregation are the customers.
Finally, the golden ratio spiral at the top of the pillar that holds up or limits the height of the ceiling shows another very interesting truth. The golden ratio is the mathematics of a type of exponential growth. The golden ratio spirals at the bottom of the pillar is showing that everything flows from the law. The golden ratio spirals at the top of the pillar means when exponential growth can no longer be maintained, the limit of the law has been reached. The golden ratio spirals beneath Shamash's shield are there because the symbol on the shield represents the law that creates both the circumstance and sets the limits. The trap of meeting need. It is precisely because every business must fulfill a human need that once all need has been met, there is no longer any justification for the business to continue existing, at which point the business or institution closes and those jobs are lost. That is why, as basic needs of the majority are met, there are two inevitable outcomes. First, planned obsolescence gets implemented as a solution to guarantee that need remains constant. Planned obsolescence is a countdown to business collapse because eventually the quality of the product degrades to the point that the cost of the product versus the time the product will last cancel out the value of purchasing it to meet the need. Second, government stabilizes the system by creating and expanding unproductive jobs to maintain employment, so the economy is guaranteed to maintain a base amperage in an attempt to avoid system collapse. Both of those inevitable outcomes lead to the exponential depletion of resources and the exponential creation of waste. The human race presently faces several crises that are growing exponentially. The current problems humanity is facing have all been caused by monetary policy. Because of this, human labor has decreased in value to the point it can no longer be transferred into enough money to fulfill the basic needs of the majority.
To Shamash, as the god of judgment, Humanity will be judged based on its ability to solve the following equation. All taxes for governments and profits for businesses come from a single source, the individual. For civilization to continue growing, there is a directly proportional relationship between the creation and meeting of human need and the expansion of the economy. The more the economy is expected to grow, the more social conditioning must be used to ensure that need, real or manufactured, grows at the same rate as the expected economic growth. How does society get maintained when the money people put their labor into no longer stores enough value to meet their basic needs? The more codependent the individual becomes to any system, the less resilience they have. The less resilience they have, the less adaptable they are. The less adaptable a person becomes, the less innovative they are. Should a solution to this problem not be found, the end of the growth cycle has been reached. The wave collapses and the wrath of the law gets unleashed upon the land. After the chaos settles, the most resilient survivors enter the new resistance constant reality phase from which the next cycle begins. You are left with these two hints. 1. On the environmental front, you cannot produce your way out of a crisis created by overproduction. 2. On the economic front, you cannot simply send people money in replacement of the daily labor effort that naturally occurs in nature. That is because if current is constant and resistance decreases, the corresponding decrease in potential manifests as declining resilience. Whenever a government gives money to remove resistances for unproductive people, they are robbing those individuals of the growth and resilience they should have earned by overcoming the resistance on their own. For the highly productive, the more one specializes, the more compensation they receive. However, the only choice you have in life is to consciously choose to engage resistance, regardless of your ability to remove it by using your earned currency to overcome it. The fact most do not do this accounts for why so many high earners are in reality useless people. That is why both poverty and success are traps. Every living thing is required by energy law to labor every day and generate enough surplus energy to survive so they can do it all again the next day. Civilization is unsustainable long-term because it replaces the need to constantly adapt to the environment with specialization. The cost of this is resilience in all other fields of study other than the one specialized in. Should a specialty no longer be needed, individuals can still adapt, but the time frame required to do so is often too short to avoid the massive lifestyle adjustment that comes with the valley they must pass through.
It is the resistance of hard times that obligates, through action, the increasing of potential to create strong people. Those strong people are unaware of that relationship. Once in stable good times, those same strong people seek to reduce all resistance, which leads to the weakening of the next generation. It is the natural path of least resistance inclination that inevitably leads to a return of hard times. This occurs once environmental circumstance changes and the resilience-resistance demands of the individual has been lost by the majority. That is why societies, throughout all of time, follow the predictable pattern of establishment, expansion, and collapse. This concludes the basic lessons the tablet of Shamash is attempting to teach. In order to overcome the many obstacles humanity currently faces, it is imperative that you realize your potential by becoming the most productive and resilient individual possible. The second half of this book has been designed as a guide to help you achieve this goal. In the sequel to this work, we will cover the final chapters in this book. The tablet as structure versus content. The tablet as personal growth. The tablet as astrophysics, the source of Shamash's knowledge. The pattern every life follows, Shamash's gift. Why the understanding of Shamash matters. They are the advanced lessons Shamash has to offer humanity.